Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome again in the session related to the mobile phone security and forensics. And myself, Dr. Divijay Rathod, Associate Professor in the Associate Dean, School of Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics, National Forensic Sciences University, which already have the status of institutions of national importance. Now, we already told that this is the lecture series which we are talking about the Android phone forensics or the Android application forensics. And we know that if you want to learn the hard disk forensics, then you should know that the what is a Windows forensics, what the file system that the Windows supports, what is a file and folder structure of the Windows. If you wants to do a hard disk forensics of which already have a pre-installed Linux, then you should know that what is a Linux, what the file system Linux supports, how the files will be organized in the Linux. So in the same way that if you really wants to understand the Android phone forensics or the Android application forensics, then you should know that what the Android file systems that it will support and what would be the file and the folder structures that is available inside the Android phone. Because if somebody says that I want to do a WhatsApp forensics, then you should know that the WhatsApp, whenever you install the WhatsApp, where the WhatsApp packages that will be installed, and we already and for this point we already discussed the Android file and the file hierarchy in the earlier session. Now today's my agenda is to discuss about the Android file system, because we know that the Android that supports the Linux kernel, and Linux itself will support the variety of file system. So you should have the knowledge about the file system. The second thing is, in some of the cases, like if I'm talk about the FTK or the NKS or the autopsies, these are the examination and the analysis software. These examination and the analysis software, they can extract the evidences from the image on the basis of the file system. So sometimes we observe that, suppose if I have created the DD image of the Android phone, and if I'm trying to upload into the autopsies won't, or the autopsy is not able to process that image. The one reason could be the autopsy is not able to understand the file system which was installed in the I would say a phone from which you have created the image. So in that cases we need to convert the image file from one image to the other image. So today my plan is to discuss about the Android file system overview. Now we know that what is the file system. I would say that basically the file system is responsible, I would say, they will decide that how to store the data, how to organize the data, how to retrieve the data from the volume. So if you say that in the Windows, you will find that there are the file directory and file and folder structure. Now remember one thing, that file and folder, I would say that somebody says a directory is what, then it is a collection of the files. Now what is a file? Then the file contains a data, and that files have the extension. Now the biggest question comes is inside the OS, because everything will be stored on the memory. Now everything, whatever stored in the memory, which is in the form of the binary, then the biggest question comes is how does the OS will manage that? Oh, this is a doc file, this is the Excel sheet, this is a MP3, this is the MP4 video, this is a JPG file. So the file system, they are responsible for managing all those extension. The file system, they are responsible for define the procedure through which the content of the file will be stored inside the memory. They are also responsible for when you retrieve the files from the memory, then how do you retrieve that file? They are also responsible for when you like suppose if you have a doc file, you can open the doc file into the Microsoft Word. So for that, who is responsible? The file system is responsible. So I would say in general that the file system is responsible for how do you store the file, how do you organize the file inside the directory, how do you locate the file inside the directory, how do you locate the directory itself also. So it is responsible for storing, organizing, retrieving the files and folder from the volume or a memory. The second thing is a basic installations may be used on one volume split into the several partitions. So we know that inside the Windows machines we have the drives, And if I talk about the Linux, then we have a partitions. So the questions comes is, each partitions that would be managed by the different file system. You like Linux, they will support the ext2, ext3, ext4. If I'm talking about the Windows, then they will support the FAT32, FAT64. So this FAT32 or the FAT64 file system, they are responsible for managing those drives, C drive, E drive, D drive logically. And inside that C drive and E drive and D drive, they are responsible for managing, storing, organizing, or retrieving those files in folder. Okay, if I talk about the Linux, then we don't have the logical drives in the Linux, but we have the partitions kind of concept. So these file system only, they are responsible for managing those partitions. They are also responsible for managing the files and folder inside the partitions. They are also responsible for retrieving, let it be a text file or doc file from the memory, and that will put in front of you. So that is called a file system. Now we know that the Microsoft Windows, that the users are mostly familiar with the FAT32. I would say that FAT32, FAT64, or the NTFS file system. Whereas the Linux users, they are more familiar with the extended file system 2, extended file system 3, 4, and these are the file system. In the same way, the Android phone also follows the file system. Okay, now let's see that. Now we know that as it is true in the case of the Linux, the Androids also utilize the mounting point and not a drive, in the sense that in the Linux we have the mounting point. Now if somebody says that what is a mounting point, then I would say that mounting point is nothing but it's a directory which mounted with the partition. As I take an example like a root that is mounted with the /root, I would say the home that is mounted with the /home. Is it? So that is called the mounting point. So mounting point is nothing but that is basically a directory which is mounted or represents a directory logically. Okay. Now each file systems, they are responsible. They are normally defining their own rules to manage the files, to retrieve the files. Okay. And remember one thing: these rules, depending on the basis of these rules, the file systems, they will offer the different speed of the file retrieval, security, size, and so on. So somebody says that FAT32 is slower than the FAT64, or the extended 4 have they have added the feature is called managing the journals, and they are more efficient than the extended file system 3. The questions comes is how do you decide all these things? So the file system, they are responsible for defining those rules, and on the basis of the rules only, the file systems, they will offer the speed, security, retrieval speed, size, and so on. Now let's see that why do we it is important for us to understand I would say the file system. So as an investigator or the forensic analyst, you should know that how the data are stored and retrieved. As I told you earlier also, that the Android partition, Android file hierarchy, and the Android file system, these are the two important pillars for the Android phone, where the partitions, they are logically bind with the mounting point, like a root is mounted with the /root, or the home is mounted with the /home. That's it. And the file hierarchy will tell you that if somebody says that, oh, I would like to know that how many partitions are there in the mobile phone, then I would say that you can do one thing: you can just write a cat /proc/ I would say the partitions, and you will get the list of the partitions. Then how do you know that where I should look for a specific evidences? And for that, you should have the knowledge of the partition, file system, and the file hierarchy. The second thing is, this knowledge about the properties and the structure of a file system will prove to be useful during the forensic analysis. The third thing is, in the Linux, as I told you earlier also, is what is a mounting? So mounting is an act of attaching an additional file system to the current accessible file system of the computer. Or I would say that what is a mounting, then we will have a small demonstration. and we have a small demonstrations. We are already root in the root of in the shell of the Android, and we know that mounts, and when you write this mounts, we know that these are the partitions, the SD6, SDA6, SDB1 or SDB3. These all are the partitions. Now remember one thing, these partitions, they are logically bind with, now this is called the mounting point. Slash system is a mounting point because this is basically a directory which is mounted with the partitions SDA6. Now this is the mounting point. The slash cache is a mounting point because this is a directory which is mounted with this partition. Okay, so that is what I'm trying to discuss. Now we'll back to our presentations. The second thing is, so that is called the mounting. So in Linux, the mounting is an act of attaching the additional file system to the current accessible file system of a computer. Now let's see. We'll go ahead. The Linux is known to support a large number of file system. They can have support to the ext1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and this file system that is used by the system are not accessed by a drive name, but instead are combined into the single hierarchical tree structure that represents this file systems as a single entry. Okay, the third point is the next point is the file systems are mounted on a directory, and the file present in this file system are now the content of the directory. And what they're trying to discuss is, now suppose this is what your mounting point. Now suppose I'll say system, I think it is inside the, like let's talk about the data partitions, because this is what the directory which is mounted with the this CDB3. and I will say data or okay, I'm inside. Let's see, I have the mounting cd data. Okay, now suppose I'll say that, see, this is what the files and folder which is organized in the form of a tree structure, and these files and folder, they are the part of the mounting point is called slash data, and this mounting point, it is mapped with what? With the SDB3. This is what they're trying to convey. Okay, and this directory is called as a mounting point. It makes no difference whether the file system exists on the local drive or on the remote devices. What they're trying to discuss is, in our case, I think the slash data, slash cache, slash system, and slash mnt slash sd card, this mounting point is exist inside our mobile phone or in our emulator. It is not necessary that even if you want this mounting point, that could be exist in the network also. Okay, now let's see that everything is integrated into the single file hierarchy that begins with the root. Is it? So as I told you that the root partition is mounted with the mounting point for the root is called the slash root. Okay, so it is basically this file system, they have the tree structure, is it? And the mounting, inside the mounting point, you have the list of files and folder, and that mounting point is mounted with any of the partition. Okay, now the one more thing is, each file system has a separate kernel modules that register the operations that is supported with something called the virtual file system. Now let me tell you what is a virtual file system. The virtual file system, they are responsible for keeping the detail related to the file system which is available inside your mobile phone. That's it. The second thing is, the virtual file system allows the different applications to access the different file systems in a uniform way. So I would say that the virtual file system, they are responsible for every file system. They are registered the operations and with the VFS, and this VFS that allows, even though you have a different applications, but they will get a, you know, uh, they can access the different file systems in a uniform way only. Now we'll try some of the practicals, that if you really wants to access that what kind of file systems do you have in your Android phone. Then let me clear this one, and we can say if you move into the, I would say in the proc, and I'll say ls. Instead of that, let me do one thing here, ls.al, and let me try to see that do we have anything like a file system inside this directory. Then I would say that, let me check. Okay, we have the two things, it's called the file systems and one is called fs. So let's see that we are trying to read this file. We are already in the proc, then we can say that file system and enter. Now remember one thing, you can get the list of the file system here. You can get the name of the file system. Now remember one thing, like this is called system fs, root fs, or the temporary fs. These are the pseudo file system that we'll discuss within a minute. But remember one thing, you'll find one word is called no dev. Now what is the meaning of the no dev? It means that the no dev properties are not mounted on the devices. So this file system, they are not mounted on the devices. So these are the unmounted, I would say, a file system. Okay, now remember one thing, so you can see that there are the very big list of file system with the no dev property, and it means that this file system, they are not mounted on the devices. Now if you find that this ext3, ext2 and ext4, this is a mounted. Okay, it means that there is a, you'll find the name of the directory which is as a mounting point for these partitions or for this file system, sorry. You also find some other, so this is what I think they will support, the ext3, ext2 and ext4. Okay, now we also find one more file is called fs. I'd say, let's see that. Okay, it's a directory, and I don't find any interesting informations from this one, but we can do one thing, we can also check cat mount, and we can also click here. I think, see, as you can see that this is what your partition, these partitions, for these partitions the mounting point is /system, and the file system which is supported by the file system of this partition is ext4. The same in the case of, this is what your partition, and the mounting point is a /cache, and there I would say the file system of this partition is ext4. So I think this Android, this emulator is supporting the ext4 file system. Now remember one thing, in the case of the SDC, as you can see, this is also the partition, and the mounting point is /mnt/SD card, but check that its file system is a virtual FAT. Okay, because this is the SD card, that's the only reason, because the SD card normally I think it is a flash file system. So when we discuss about the file the FAT file systems, then we'll have the details, we'll discuss this in detail. The second thing is, I think most of the external or the SD cards, they normally supports the FAT file system. Just for your information. Okay, now we'll back to our presentation. So that is what a small presentation is there. Now the second thing is viewing the file system on the Android device. So if you really wants to view it, you just need to write the cat/proc/file system, and this will give you gives you the list of the file systems that will be supported by your Android phone. But if you really wants to know that the which partition is supporting which file system, or the partition is of which file system, you can just write the cat/proc/mount, and you'll get the file system for the specific partition. The second thing is the file system preceded by the nodef keyword property are not mounted on the devices. So you don't find I would say, you don't find the mounting the mount point, that is any directory which is logically mapped with those partition. Now let's talk about some of the common Android file system. Okay, that's the overview about the file systems, and how would you know that which file systems that your Android phone is supporting. Now the second thing is, let's talk about the common file system. It means that the file system present in the Android can be divided in the three main category. The first category, that is the flash memory file system, that is normally used in the it's a non-volatile memory, and it is used in the pen drive or in the SD card also. Okay, then we have the media based file system. Okay, that is related to the files like audio video files related, that related based file system, and is called a pseudo file system. The pseudo file system means, I would say, that's a logical group of. Now let's understand the flash memory file system. Now remember one thing, the flash memory is, I would say, it is a non-volatile memory, and that can be erased and reprogrammed in the units of the memory, that is called the block. So I would say that the example of the flash memory, it could be your SD card, or it could be your, I would say, the pen drive. Okay, and erased, we can delete the files, we can format your pen drive or the SD card. Okay, the second thing is, due to the particular characteristics of the flash memory, the special file system are needed to write over the media and deals with the long erase time of the certain block. So we can erase the files, the content of the flash memory card, or it could be the SD card, or it could be the pen drive, and we can erase something, we can format also. So for that purpose only, there is a need of the special file system. The second thing is, while the supported file systems vary on the different Android devices, the common flash memory file system are as follow. So it could be an extended file allocation table, it could be a flash friendly file system, it could be a general flash file system version 2, it could be a yet another flash file system version 2, or it could be a robust file system. So I have given the example of only the file systems, but there are the varieties of the various types of file systems which will be supported by the Android device, specifically in the case of the flash memory file system. So let's talk about the extended file system. I'm not going to talk about each of the file system, because some of the file systems is now outdated and it is replaced by some another file system. So the first one is called the extended file allocation table, that is called ExFit, and this type of file system is a Microsoft proprietary file system, and this is a file system which is optimized for the flash drive. We have one more file system is called a flash friendly file system, and this file system, it was introduced by the Samsung as an open source file system, and it was it was also available with the Samsung mobile phone. Now the one more file system is called the yet another flash file system version 2, that is called the YAFFS2, and I would say that currently this YAFFS2 is not supported in the newer kernel version, but yes, in the certain mobile manufacturers they might still continue with this YAFFS S2 file system. And the next one is called the robust file system. Now what the problem which we are facing when we have the proprietary file system? The issues is, like, suppose if I have the Samsung mobile phone with the file system is called a flash friendly file system. So what, as a digital investigator, suppose if I'll create the image of the Samsung mobile phone which supports the F2FS, and after creating the image, if I'll upload that image into the Autopsy, FTK or NCASE, the biggest problem for this examination and the analysis software is they are not able to understand the file system. And if any of like FTK, NKS or the autopsies, if they don't understand the file system, then they don't know that how to retrieve, manage, okay, and how do you operate those files in folder. That's what the biggest problem is. Let's see, we'll go ahead as there are the second common file system is called the media based file system. I would say that it's not like this is a separate file system, but the media based file system, besides the flash memory file system discussed earlier, the Android device typically supports the following media based file system. The media based file system means the media represents, it could be your images or it could be a video. And we know that the images and video ultimately store and are also they managed by the file system which your system supports. Take an example, if the Android supports Ext4, then the Ext4 file system that will manage those media. It means that they will manage that how do we store the images, how do we store the videos, how do we retrieve the images, how do we retrieve the videos. So this the media based file systems, it's talk about that how does the media, different images and the videos that will be managed by the file system. Because nowadays the videos and this audio video and the images, they are very important evidences in most of the cases. So this media based file systems, it could be extended file system, that is a ext2, ext3 or the ext4. It could be a file allocation table that also support the FAT file system, and they also supports the virtual file allocation table, that is called a VFat. Now let's talk about the extended file system. I would say that the extended file systems, there are, I think the versions which is latest available in the market is called ext4. Okay, and this was one of the first file systems that was the virtual file system. And the second one is the ext2, ext3 and the ext4 are the subsequent version. And I would say the biggest difference between this file system is a journaling. So journaling is the main advantage of the ext3 over the ext2. What does it mean? That in case of your file system corruption or the unexpected shutdown, what this you don't need to verify the file system again and again. That is what and it will manage the file system in a smooth way. And we know that if you don't want to if you don't need to verify the file system, it means that even if you have the unexpected shutdown, the files and folder which will be managed by the file system, that will be available inside your memory. The second one is, we'll go ahead now, let's talk about the ext4 file system, that is called the fourth generation or the fourth extended file system. And we know that in the recent I would say the dual core processor available in installed mobile devices, this file system is very well known. The second thing is the YAFF-SS2 file system is known to have a bootlinked on the dual core system, because the YAFF-S2, that file systems won't have a good support with a dual core processor, and sometimes it's got bootlinked. Okay, but and the second thing is with the gingerbread version of the Android, the YAFFS file systems was swapped for the ext4. So because the ext4 file systems, they have the very good support, specifically in the case of the dual core processor. So now the new version of the mobile phone which is available in the market, they will support the ext4. Even if you can see that the demonstration which I have shown, even this emulator, the Genymotion emulator, they also support the ext4 file system. So just gingerbread onward version of the Android, this YAFF file system was replaced with the ext4, because YAFF S2 file systems, that is got stuck when it works with the dual core systems. That was the only reason. Okay, now one more thing is, let's talk about the file allocation table, that is called the FAT. And these file systems such as FAT12, FAT16, FAT32 or the FAT64, these are the file system which was which is normally supported by the Microsoft DOS driver, or maybe supported by the Microsoft. Now let's talk about the next file system, that is called the virtual file allocation table, that is called a VFit. Actually, this is, as you can see, that it is basically it is related with the virtual. I would say it is related to the FAT60 or the FAT32 file system. So this file system is nothing but it is an extension of the FAT16 or the FAT32 file system. And the second thing is the Microsoft's FAT32 file system is supported by most of the Android devices. The third thing is it is also supported by almost all major operating systems, including the Windows, Linux, and the Mac OS. And this enables this systems to easily read, modify, and delete the files present on the FAT32 portion of the Android device. The most important things which I want to discuss is the most of the extended SD card, external SD card, you know, they normally use a FAT32. So, the SD card which normally use even with the latest phones, they also support the VFit. And if you observed, I think if you observed in our case, like if you observed in our case also that this mounting point, they will support the Ext4, but as you can see that the SD card, that is called the external SD card, they supports the VFit. Okay, so that's why even the latest also that the most of the external SD card they normally use support the virtual FAT. Okay, and that's why they use the word is this enables the systems to easily read, modify, and delete the file present on the FAT32 portion of the Android device. So the Android is obviously it's a Linux kernel. So and the FAT, I would say they are normally the Windows normally support the FAT 16, 32 or 64 file system. So it's they are not trying to discuss that the Android supports the FAT32, but the Android phone in which you have the SD card, and those SD cards, most of the SD cards, they nowadays they will support the virtual file allocation table, or they will support the VFit file system. That is what they are trying to convey. Now there are along with this, we also have some of the file system that is called a pseudo file system. And I would say that the pseudo file system is nothing but this is basically a logical grouping of files. Okay, and in the Android phone or in the Android emulators, you can find the pseudo file systems like the C control group, the root file system, the proc file system, the sys file system, and the temp file system. And suppose if you observed, suppose if I write cat partition, if I'll enter, sorry, cat mounts, and if you enter, if you observed that, or I would say that I need to move into the dev and cat proc file system, and if you observe that, see, we just wrote you can find the no dev. It means that these file systems which you can see as a no dev, they don't have any mounting point. That's it. But these are basically a logical group of files, and that's why you don't find any mounting point, and that's why you can see that no dev. Okay, and if you check, this is called a pseudo file system. That is what I'm trying to discuss. Okay, and if you check here, I think in other cases like for the VFAT, was it, you don't find a no dev, because these are the file system which obviously have the mounting point. Okay, so let's see that. So these are the list of the file system that is called the pseudo file system, because basically they are logical groupings of the files. So we will have a few practicals related to that one. Let me see the clear, and we can do one thing, we can move into the proc, and we can say AL, and inside the AL I think you can find the C group. Let me check that, can we find the C group or not? Yeah, we have the C groups. So this is ultimately a pseudo file system, I would say. So we'll move into the C groups. Then we can say right cd C groups, and oh sorry, it is a file only. So C groups and oh sorry. Let me check that what happens. Sorry, I was not in the directory. I was not in the pro file system. That's the only reason is I'm not able to access it. So cat C group, and you can enter. Now you can see that this is what a C group is. Now let's see that what is a C group is. This is nothing but this type of the pseudo file system that provides a way to access and define the several kernel parameters, and there are a number of different process groups, control groups, which are present inside the Linux kernel, and that control group you can see on your screen. So this is basically a pseudo file system. The second could be, I would say that ls-al, that is called a rootfs. That also you can find it here in this proc. Then if you move up, I think you can find it. You definitely find here is, let me do one thing. So basically this root file system is, now let's talk about the root file system. And basically this type of file system is, I would say, it is the main component of the Android, and this will contain the information that is required to boot the devices. And whenever your device gets boot, or whenever the boot process starts, they need the some of the core files, like the mounting the root file systems and other informations. So that informations your Android OS can get it from this root file system. The second thing is, this file system is basically mounted at a slash that is called with the root folder, that is a slash root folder. And these file system, I would say, or this is the file systems on which all other file systems are, they will mounted later on. And if the file system is corrupt, the device that cannot be boot. So I would say that the moral of the story, this root file system that keeps the important configurations file that is required to boot the device. And this root file system is basically mounted with the slash root, I would say, the mounting point. And other file systems, they are got, I would say, they are mounted after, once this slash root directory will mount with the root file system. Now if you really wants to check it practically, then suppose if I'll write ls-al, then sorry, the ls-al, then what you will get is, instead of that, let me try the ls only. Now when you do the ls, you can find the root. Now somebody says, sir, this is the root directory, because if I'll try root, then you can say, sir, this is a root directory. This is not a file system. No, I'll tell you that what is the logic behind that. This is a directory, so this is basically a mounting point. Okay, like a proc is basically a mounting point. This is a directory, because we discussed earlier also that the mounting point is basically a directory which is mounted with the partition. But remember one thing, these are the pseudo partitions. Pseudo partitions in the sense that these are the logical groups of the directory. I'll show you that, where you can see that the proc is the pseudo partition, the pseudo file system, root is a pseudo file system, and where this root mounting point is mounted. So for that we need to check, I think, the cat proc /file system. Okay, sorry, we are inside the root, so we just need to come out from the root. So that's why I'm not able to get a hint. So I'll say okay, sorry, I'll write ls clear. We'll see proc/file system, and we can enter. Now see, as you can see that if I'm talk about the root, you can find, see, the C group. Is it a temp file system that is called a temp fs? So this is basically a file system. And I would say if you go ahead, you can find the other name also. Let me just scroll up. Okay, see, you have the sys file system, you have a root file system, you have a, you have a proc is basically a file system only, the C group is a file system only, and the temp fs is also the file system. But remember one thing, instead of, in the front of this file system, you find one what is called the no dev. No dev means that this file system, it is not mounted with any of the device or with any of the partition, and they are basically a pseudo file system. It means that they are the logical group of the files. Now if somebody says that, say, I would like to know that this temp fs, this is the file system, it is mounted with which logical group or with which directory. For that, I think we need to check that cat proc / mounts. Just a minute. Mounts, and if you enter, now check here. See, this is what your C group. Now let's see that. Let's check that the temp fs. Okay, so you'll get the mounting point. Now you can see that this temp fs file system is also got mounted. So you can get the informations from here. See, the temp fs is mounted with the /mnt/obb, or the temp fs is mounted with the asec, or the C group is mounted with, so this is, here you can get the information that where it is mounted. See, the system fs is mounted with a /sys. The proc is mounted with the /proc. The temp fs, that is a temporary file system, is mounted with the dev. And as you can see that the root file system is mounted with the /. So here you can say that, so what they're trying to discuss is, I'm trying to discuss is when you write ls, so these are the mounting point. The proc, root, sbin, sys, system, these all are the mounting point. Okay, and if you check your, this is the root mounting, or it's a root directory which is mounted with the root fs file system. That is what I'm trying to discuss. Now let's see the next, I would say the pseudo file system is called the proc fs. Okay, now let's check the proc fs. I think if you check here that where is the, so let's see the proc file system. So you can see like proc, and if you see ls, now remember one thing, this proc file system, which is known as an pseudo file system, it is basically a collection of all those, I will say, a variety of different files. And the second thing, you should know that this proc file system is also important because this type of file system that normally it will keep the informations regarding the kernel data structure. It also keeps the informations regarding the processes and other system related information inside this directory only. Because I'm using the word directory because this /proc is basically a mounting point, and this is got mounted with the proc pseudo file system. Like, let's take an example. Like if somebody wants to know that if I'll use some of the commands, like take an example like a cat proc, sorry, I need to come out from this one. I'll say like cat cpu info, and if you enter, this will gives you the informations about the CPU of the devices. And even if you just do a ls, I think we have seen so many other I will say the information related to the kernel. Like if you want to to see the partitions only, then we normally write a partitions, and you can see the partition also. If you want to see the mounting point, then you can write the mount. You can also check the mounting point also. This will give you the mounts also, and that's why this profile system is equally important. Now let's see that the next pseudo file systems that we have in the list is called a sys file system, SYSFS. Now let's see that if I'll do, let me clear this one, and if I'll write ls, you can find here is called a sys. So this sys is nothing but it is basically a directory, and again it is a mounting point for the I would say a slash or a mounting point for the system file system, that's the SYS file system. So we can do one thing, sorry, and let me write ls, and there you can find this is SYS. So let me write SYS, enter, clear, and ls. Now here you can find the different I would say the files related to the system. Now remember one thing, this file system that will keep the informations about the configuration of the devices. And suppose let's if you see the output, like you will have the folder like a bus, a block, a dev, devices, farm. So basically this file system they will keep the informations regarding the configuration of the devices. Now let's see the next file systems that we have, the pseudo file systems that we have is called TMP file system, that is called TMPFS. So we'll check, we'll move again to our Santoku and we'll see that, okay, I'll say ls, and here you can find the TMP. Now this is a TMP is a directory which is a mounting point which is mounted with the TMPFS file system. So I'll do one thing, cd TMP, and if you write ls, you'll find the different files and folder inside this slash TMP directory. Now remember one thing, this TMP file system is a temporary storage facility on the device that store the files of a RAM, that is called the volatile memory. And remember one thing, that this is an often mounted with the slash dev directory. And I would say the biggest advantage of using the RAM, that it is a faster access and the retrieval. Even though once the device is restarted or switched off, this data will be accessible. This data will not be accessible anymore, obviously, because when you restart your device, the things which be available on the RAM, that is got flushed. Okay, and remember one thing, this file system is very important specifically for the forensic investigator, because if you really want to examine the recently accessed files and folder, for that this TMP file system is very important. And the investigator also would come to know that what things has happened before the devices got reboot. So in this case, that this partition is I would say it is very important. Now let's see that what other file system is of our interest. So that could be, I think, the last file systems that we have. Now we already discussed that if you really wants to know the different file system, for that we have used, there are 3 commands which are very important to know, and I think I discussed in a detailed way also, that is a cat and proc, sorry, cat proc / partition. This will give you the list of the partition. Now which directory is mounted with this partitions, for that we have used cat proc / mount. Okay, and this will give you that which directory is mounted with which partitions. That is also important. And as we can see that some of the partitions are the pseudo file system, and some of are the I would say the directories that are mounted with the specific partition. Okay, so I would say that this is enough for today. I think in the next sessions we are going to discuss some more important topics related to the forensics. Thank you.